Today we're going to find out what came first, science or science fiction. Come with me.
Radioactive spider bites. Kryptonite. Rings that can create anything. And the super soldier serum. Yes, this is the world of comics.
What do you think came first, science or science fiction?
Oh, I think science fiction. Yeah.
What do you think came first, science or science fiction?
You know, I would say probably science fiction came first, and once you sort of understood that, I mean, you look at a lot of like the mythology and stuff like that, the different like Greek mythology, for example, and different like pantheons of different gods that were responsible for different things, and how that's changed over time. You know, sort of, emphasizes how science fiction came first. And I mean, we're still learning things every day. You know.
What do you think came first, science or science fiction?
Science fiction, 100%. Because, I mean, Arthur C. Clarke, for example, he theorized the use of satellites, and then in reality, within 20 years after he proposed them, ideas that were put forward in Star Trek became reality. Something silly like sliding doors. Science fiction always goes for science, and I think it was again Arthur C. Clarke who said that any civilization that's sufficiently advanced, technology looks like magic to us.
Who are you guys today, and why did you dress up like this?
I'm Data from Star Trek Next Generation. He's Captain Picard.
And I'm Wesley Crusher.
What branch of science does Star Trek most relate to?
Pardon me?
What branch of science does Star Trek most relate to?
Star Trek?
Yeah. Maybe not this job.
You don't know about Star Trek either? We don't know anything about Star Trek.
Is this Star Trek? We thought it was Star Wars.
Actually, no.
I'm kidding.
No, actually, there's a convention for Trekkies, for Star Trek.
Okay.
But
We got lost in the way.
No, you probably won't see anyone else dressed as Star Trek because it's not a comic, it's a series and a movie. But we love comics, and that's why we wanted to be here.
What about science?
Oh,
That's
science,
what she wants to
science,
know about.
science.
Yeah.
Warp speed.
He's in high school, so he can tell you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Branch of science.
Like
Physics.
Yeah, it's their engineering.
I have to say science, probably science fiction in my heart. I mean, because I'm a science fiction fan, but you have to dream of things to want to figure out how things work, I think. So I think that imagination is what's most important.
What do you think came first, science or science fiction?
Well, I guess technically science fiction. Because people were sort of pondering things before they had an answer.
Who are you dressed as today, and what's your superpower?
I am dressed as Clark Kent, transforming into Superman.
What branch of science do you think Superman most relates to?
Branch of science?
Yeah.
Biology?
That's a good
I
answer.
think, yeah.
What do you think came first, science or science fiction?
You try that one, I don't know.
Science fiction. Yeah, I guess.
Is there a correct answer?
There's not a correct answer. Whatever your opinion.
Science fiction.
Okay. What do you guys think came first, science or science fiction? We like both. I mean, they really relate together.
Came first. I don't know.
Science, I mean, you can't really have
Probably came around the same
science.
time, I would say. Yeah, well, maybe. Kind of science fiction about science, I guess.
Well, science came first because science fiction came from math. So,
And what do you think came first, science or science fiction?
Science fiction.
Ever wonder how robotics got started? Jennifer Pulley from NASA Connects has more.
You may think of a robot as a mechanical creature that walks around. But did you know that the first person to use the word robot wasn't a scientist at all? In fact, he was a Czechoslovakian writer named Karel Čapek. In Czech, the word robota means forced labor. Now, in his play, Rossum's Universal Robots, Čapek used the word to describe electronic servants who turn on their masters when given emotion.
of a deadly cosmic ray, the Earth is invaded by indestructible moon monsters. Their ghastly mission, death for all humans. What astounding technical developments are being made to protect mankind? Robot Monster brings you an actual preview of the devastating forces of our future. Unsuspected revelations of incredible horrors that will terrify you with their brutal reality.
There is no escape from me. Fool humans, there is no escape.
Oh, that's Jeannie, my wife. Hello there.
Coming, sir. Here I am, sir. Yes, sir.
The old girl's still eager, isn't she?
Outer space.
Here we go gathering nuts in May on a cold and frosty morn.
I came here to give you these facts. But if you threaten to extend your violence, this Earth of yours will be reduced to a burned-out cinder.
How do you relate to science?
How do we relate to science? Well, you know, in our stories we use a lot of actual science, and we basically butcher it and warp it into something else that we can use to tell our stories with.
Using Space is a science fiction novel that deals in the year 2095. Earth is in severe ecological decline because of the Third World War, as well as pollution and just everyday neglect. And we find the need within a century to find a new homeworld for our planet, for our kind, because Earth will no longer be able to sustain life. And we actually do come across a planet filled with pyramids similar to those of Egypt, as well as odd-looking beings, and there's a lot of twists and turns along the way, but we do meet the Greys eventually, who explain that they're the caretakers of that race, as well as us, and explain about our past, as well as what's in our store for our future. And I'm not a fan of predictable endings, but you could definitely expect a lot of twists and turns, and really good book. It was.
How does your comic relate to science? Like what branch?
I would actually have to say it's speculative, some of it, but I deal a lot with Earth's environment, and the problems actually that we're having now are somewhat in the book. One of the characters is reading an article, tsunami hits Taipei, and that was before, unfortunately, the tsunami hit Japan. So I'm trying to raise awareness about Earth's environment and teach mankind, let's take care of our planet before it comes too late.
My comic is about fairy tale characters. They go to high school together and living in modern suburbia. It's very funny. It's ages 9 and up. There's nothing obscene or bad about it. It's a funny strip.
How does your comic relate to science?
Because they're in high school together, they are sometimes in science classes. I actually have a storyline that runs where the Frog Prince and Rapunzel are paired together to do a science project. And of course, he's in love with Rapunzel and she doesn't like him. So she's, it's crazy hijinks. It's funny.
Teenage drama.
Teenage drama, right.
I'm Supergirl, and I fly, and I have superpowers. I can do X-ray vision. I can burn people's. If I get mad at them, I'll burn them up and stuff. But I love flying.
What branch of science does it most relate to?
I'd have to say aerodynamics because of the flying mostly.
The book is called Gray. It's a part sci-fi, part horror story about a New York City cop who moves to the country and just may have an alien star.
What branch of science do you think it most relates to?
UFOology, which is a real thing. I believe it may even be pronounced ufology, but it's the science of UFOs.
Hi, so can you tell us a little bit about your comic?
Not mine, I'm just sitting here. Sure. I've got two streams going. The major one is Twisted Dark, and that's the first thing I started writing with. It's about a series of short stories that are all connected, and they're all real nature, all dark and a little bit twisted. Pretty much what it says in the cover.
What branch of science do you think your comic most relates to?
It's science fiction in areas because, for example, there's one story there called Window Pane, which is about how technology in the future will affect people and how people can use it. Other things is very scientific based, for example, animals and facts around it. I try and put in every story something interesting about science that exists.
And how do you guys relate to science?
We're scientists. Well, I'm a scientist. He's an attorney. Ghostbusters. I'm sorry, I mean an accountant.
I'm the key master of the book.
So, as a paranormal scientist, we invented these proton packs, PK emitters for detecting supernatural activity and for trapping and capturing ghosts that are otherwise harmful to the citizens of New York City. We're the Ghostbusters.
What branch of science does it most relate to?
With Z-Girl, it relates to, because of zombies, it relates to biology, a lot of physics, metaphysics as well. For the other books, there are physics is the big one, especially with anytime you're dealing with a hitman story. If you've ever seen any great stuntman, movie with lots of stunts and stuff, that's what Dead Man's Party is filled with. Also, I would say with books like Wendover or Z-Girl, when you're dealing with monsters, you're also dealing with cryptozoology and more esoteric kind of Middle East and Eastern religions. Obviously we play in the realm of science fiction a lot. However, being the writer, I try to make sure that everything that I have is grounded in science somehow. Weapons that I use in my books, they're actual weapons that are out there. The Z-Girl and the Four Tigers has everything from modern warfare to weapons to mythology to actual locations. In fact, the first issue takes place in Angkor Wat, which is a mythological temple, or a temple in Cambodia that has a lot of mythological history behind it. So I try to make sure I got a lot of, as I like to say, verisimilitude in all of the books that I write.
Run a horror magazine. It's mostly interviews, articles, upcoming movies, pretty much anything you can think of.
How does your comic relate to science?
Oh, well, I mean, it's very science fiction driven. There's a lot of different aspects to it that you'll see as it goes on. Like the first issue is very introductory. I had to take the time to introduce all the characters and introduce the villains and the different conflicts. So, as you progress, you sort of see I go into the different characters, different powers, and all their powers are very sci-fi. Magnetism, phasing through objects, and Justin's laser manipulation, and things like that. And as it continues, the story is going to delve even further into that with government involvement, trying to figure out how they can be used in certain ways. So,
my name is Murder Boy, and I'm representing the Vampire Freaks group.
What branch of science would you think that is most related to?
Probably physics.
Who are you today?
The Captain America.
And how does he relate to science?
Science. Well, he was experimented on to get his powers. He had to go against the enemy forces, the Nazis and stuff like that were also involved in science and stuff like that. So he was kind of in the middle of a science war. So that was pretty.
How does your comic relate to science?
Wow. Well, you want to take that, Lush? See, you didn't meet Luscious over here.
Oh, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you?
How are you? What was the question now? I heard science.
How does your comic relate to science?
It depends on if you go in the metaphysical realm or even just general science, because a good chunk of the story takes place in what we call the other side of your passion. You know how there's science always trying to connect that, but then there's also a good chunk of it happening on Earth. So I mean, as far as science, I guess there's science connecting it, how we get back and forth from the regular world to the other side, but then there's also weapons from the other side.
There's a lot of really cool things. I don't want to give too much away.
What's the sci-fi invention you would have wanted most on station?
Oh, that's easy. I have been a fan of science fiction for a long time, and my big talk that I give starts off with about 8 minutes of science fiction history and why we are where we are today. So to answer this question, let me simply ask the audience the question of, knowing that we have been influenced with ideas to go farther away, to cross horizons, Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, making us go mentally in their science fiction books, which have been inspirations, to Mars, to discover things, to go for the unknown and uncover things. We progress through the history of science fiction till we get to a show that is probably preeminently influential in our thinking, which would be Star Trek. And how many people have seen the original series with Captain Kirk? Okay, so then let me just ask you, when Captain Kirk steps out after he beams down onto a planet, the first thing he does is he whips out his cell phone. And and he turns to Mr. Spock and goes, "Mr. Spock, would you scan the environments for whatever?" And Mr. Spock uses his smartphone. So with that kind of setup for this question, what the space station is large enough, and you can lose people into the next meal, that what I really wanted was one of those little communicators that I can go, "Hey, Sweetie, where are you?" We do have an intercom system, but you have to go over to the intercom system. I would much rather have a personal intercom communicator system that we could just talk to each other with.
I'm a teaching professor in the physics department, and I've been here at Carnegie Mellon since 1980. Well, it focuses mainly on understanding the science in science fiction films and television shows. So we do some readings on cutting-edge science and then look at some science fiction film examples that relate to it and try to critique the science fiction films from a scientific point of view. And it was inspired by actually this book, which I'm sure you've heard of. This is the first edition, and Physics of Star Trek, written by Lawrence Krauss. Susan Henry was the dean of the Mellon College of Science at the time and encouraged a lot of the faculty to create mini courses for MCS students to keep them interested in science. And I proposed a course on science and science fiction, and everybody thought it was a great idea. But they suggested one of the things we had to do was to build a warp drive as part of the coursework, which we haven't succeeded in doing.
Whether it's the Starship Enterprise or the space station from 2001, A Space Odyssey, science fiction has always provided inspiration to scientists and engineers that build and design real spacecraft. Satellites, space stations, men on the moon, They were all once science fiction, but are now science fact.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
A lot of space scientists are actually science fiction writers. The famous German rocket scientist Wernher von Braun was the man behind the Apollo moon landings, but he also wrote science fiction for magazines and films.
By the grace of God, and in the name of the United States of America, I take possession of this planet on behalf of and for the benefit of all mankind.
So not surprisingly, the European Space Agency, ESA, takes science fiction very seriously. Since it was founded in 1975, ESA has developed loads of advanced space probes and satellites, and sent European astronauts into space. Working with international partners, it's currently building the International Space Station, the ISS. One of the most influential science fiction writers of the 20th century was Arthur C. Clarke, but before he was a writer, he was a working scientist. Clarke wrote a paper in 1945 that proposed the idea of geostationary satellites for telecommunications. There are now hundreds of these satellites orbiting the Earth, and the geostationary orbit has been named after him. It's called the Clarke's orbit. As well as writing novels, Arthur C. Clarke wrote the screenplay for the classic science fiction movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. Most of the action in 2001 is set on board a rotating space station. These can be traced back to the wheeled space stations proposed by Wernher von Braun in sci-fi magazines from the 1960s. The space station in 2001 acted as a transfer point from low Earth orbit to other planets. And one day the ISS may perform the same function when we send human missions to other planets in our solar system. Space stations are very exotic, but of course they have to be constructed in space, and the crew and supplies need to be ferried up there from Earth.
3, 2, 1, top.
To do this, you need spaceships that can escape Earth's gravitational pull. For this, you need powerful rockets. The man who has been called the father of modern spaceflight, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, was inspired by writers like Jules Verne, who wrote scientific adventure novels. Jules Verne made a serious attempt to address the problem of launching a spacecraft that could escape Earth's gravitational pull. He opted to launch his heroes in a moonship from a giant cannon with the crew inside a huge shell. Unfortunately, in reality, the acceleration forces created by Verne's cannon would have completely crushed the crew. The acceleration of real rockets is much lower than the shells from Verne's space cannon. ESA's main rocket launcher is the Ariane series. In February of 2008, an Ariane 5 successfully launched ESA's automated space freighter, the ATV, on its journey to the ISS. Based on the experience gained while building the ATV, ESA now has the capabilities to develop a spacecraft that can carry a crew into space. But for flights to other planets, new innovative spacecraft will be needed to travel those vast distances in a reasonable amount of time. And once again, science fiction is leading the way. Interplanetary spacecraft powered by solar sails appear in films like Star Wars and Star Trek, but one of the earliest references to this amazing idea was a story by Cordwainer Smith. In the 1950s, he wrote how the first interstellar spaceships might be propelled by light sails. Light sails may sound like sci-fi fantasy, but the international space agencies are finding ways to turn this incredible technology into reality. The idea is that particles of light, that's photons from stars, apply a pressure to the surfaces they hit, and in the near vacuum of space, that can give enough energy to propel a spacecraft. One of the main reasons to travel to other planets is to set up a permanent base there. And the colonization of other worlds is a common theme in science fiction. From H.G. Wells' First Men in the Moon to Philip K. Dick's Martian stories, writers have speculated at just how this could be achieved. Expanding our presence in the universe is not something to be undertaken lightly, but ESA and the other international space agencies are working on ideas for bases on the Moon and Mars. So just as science fiction led the way 100 years ago, it's inspiring us again as we begin to plan missions to other planets in our solar system.
I love science appeal. I love science appeal.
My name is Corbin Dallas, and I love science appeal, and I was not paid to say this.
Lilu, I love science appeal. Multipass.
I love science.
I love science appeal so much, he don't even know. Don't tell him.
We love science appeal.
We love science